He got crushed early on Thursday night, but mounted an impressive comeback that was always one step behind the Bulls. Chicago attacked Miami's defense consistently and eventually cruised to an easy win as Orlando Robinson played himself out of the rotation. And can Miami figure out a way to stop Chicago when the two teams meet again on Saturday? We break it all down and answer your questions on today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat. I'm Wes Goldberg. Joining me as always is David Ramil. However you're tuning in on YouTube, Odyssey, your favorite podcast app, thanks so much for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use the code all lowercase LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Recording this Thursday night after the Heat lost to the Bulls 124-116. After going down 33-8 to start the game, the Heat outscored the Bulls 108-91 the rest of the way. But it was just too big of a hole to climb out of on the second night of a back-to-back for Miami. The Heat never led in this one. Jimmy Butler had 20. Jaime Jaquez had 22. But the Bulls got big games from Coby White, who had 26 points and 11 assists, no turnovers. Nikola Vucevic, who finished with 24 points and 12 rebounds. Ayo Dosunmu, who had 24 points and 8 rebounds. And then 23 points for DeMar DeRozan. David, why did the Heat lose this game?
I think Chicago just outplayed him, to be honest with you. You can make excuses, and certainly Eric Spoelstra and the team didn't after the game. They were understanding of the fact that, they played badly. They started off badly, and while they had some energy and grit and tenacity in Spo's words, they had that kind of those intangibles that you need in order to find a way to win. They just got outplayed, and that's the reality. I know a lot of people look at Chicago's record and say maybe they're not a particularly good team, but they have a number of weapons, and they were all playing very well. And I think Miami's defense just looked really sluggish to start the game. Obviously, that 20-point deficit, indicates that their defense was really bad, but they got some really nice performances from Coby White. Alex Caruso in his first few minutes there while he was playing, he was very effective. They just kept driving past Miami's point of attack defenders, getting to the rim, kicking it out to a wide open shooter. The defense would collapse. It just was really, really sloppy to start it off. Miami eventually found their rhythm defensively, but they lost it again later on in the second half when Chicago figured out a way of attacking the paint very consistently, just going at Orlando Robinson, going at Thomas Bryant, Kevin Love, whoever was in the middle, ostensibly, because there wasn't really anybody in the middle for Miami. It just seemed like Chicago had a pretty wide open lane to get to the rim in the second half.
Points in the paint, Chicago outscored Miami 52-38. Second chance points, Chicago outscored Miami 14-8. I wrote something for allyoucanheat.com just kind of breaking down the three things that the Heat had to do to win this game. It was, don't let Coby White beat you. Win the offense. Don't let Chicago dominate the offensive glass.
Oops.
And win the first quarter. And the Heat did none of those things. They
0
did
for 3.
0 for 3. Just struck out on all of them. Coby White beat them. 26 points, 11 rebounds, and 0 turnovers. He was awesome, and he's been awesome for Chicago. Basically, since Zach LaVine went down. It's a cool story for them. Not so great right now for Miami. Offensive rebounds, 11 of them for Chicago. A whole lot of them for Nikola Vucevic, but Dosunmu was getting on that offensive glass. Like, the guards were out rebounding Miami's guards. Not a whole lot of boxing out. You mentioned the point of attack defense. It was something I noticed as well. Look, the Heat were playing on the second night of a back-to-back. You can kind of schedule these losses. It looked like they were playing on the second night of a back-to-back in this one early on until they kind of got their legs under them. And you'll talk to players and they'll say, yeah, you know what? The hardest part of the second night of back-to-back is usually the beginning of the game and the end of the game, right? The beginning of the game, you're still a little wobbly. You don't got your sea legs quite right. Then you kind of find your footing. But then by the end of the game, you're just exhausted at that point. And so that kind of felt like what happened with Miami. They got out to that early deficit, 33-8. They climb back in this thing. They outscore Chicago in the second quarter. They win the third quarter, and then they just don't have enough gas to finish it off at the end. The problem with this one is that the Bulls entered this game 29th in first quarter point differential. They were the second worst team in the league in the first quarter. They got outscored by an average of almost 4 points a game in the first quarters on average this season. So as soon as they won the first quarter to the degree that they won it, this game was pretty much over because Chicago is they're better in all the other quarters than they are in the first quarter. And then they have a closer into DeMar DeRozan, which we saw unfold tonight.
Right. No, that's exactly right. The first and fourth quarter thing for Miami, I guess it was indicative of fatigue, but they also changed their style of play. You have to give Chicago some credit here. I know a lot of Heat fans
Of
are
course.
kind of frustrated with everything, but Chicago did a really good job. And maybe it was they found those weaknesses in Miami's defense and were able to attack pretty
And they've been
consistently. But
playing well, like I said. Like they're what
no doubt.
5-2 in their last 7 games.
Even Eric Spoelstra acknowledged the fact that well, he didn't want to say much more because it didn't want to seem inflammatory, especially he didn't want to attack a particular individual player. But he said basically, well, he said they're playing different, and he just kind of left it at that because he didn't really want to get into.
So we don't think the Heat are
details about it.
trading for Zach LaVine anytime soon, then,
I don't know.
unless
I
they
don't know
want
if
to
that's
play more
okay.
like the old Bulls.
Yeah, probably not. Yeah, he's probably not on their radar. But that's a whole other conversation. As far as just Miami they just blew it in different ways. Like they really that struggle in the first quarter really took a lot out of them. And I think if not for a Jamal Cain dunk on Patrick Williams, I don't know that Miami would have found their spark at all because they really looked like they were just completely blown out of the water. They were looking around in the huddle. They didn't really seem to have any kind of answers or any way of really climbing out of that. And then all of a sudden they got this little spark from Jamal Cain.
The block
slowly but
on
surely,
Patrick Williams. Yeah, they go 12. They outscore the Bulls on a 12-1 run after that to kind of get back into the game.
And Eric Spoelstra changing his rotation, bringing in a lot of young guys right away. Took Jimmy
I love that.
Yes.
I loved it. I love that Spo's like, you guys don't have it. I'm putting RJ Hampton in there.
Yeah.
That was it.
He was like, I asked him after the game why Duncan Robinson only played 26 minutes after having played 40 the night before. And I asked him if it was fatigue. And he said, no, I was just trying everything. I was just trying anything to see what happened. It didn't work out that way. It's like, yeah, I get you.
What did you make of Duncan not kind of finishing the game? I thought he had a good game offensively. I didn't think Miami overall played that well defensively, but I don't know that was necessarily only a Duncan Robinson problem. He was a -13 in this game, but like Lowry was a -14. I thought he actually played pretty well in this one. Orlando Robinson was a -13, and I thought he played pretty poorly in this one. So I don't really know what to make of the plus minus in this thing because it's all out of whack based on the starting lineup getting out to that such a bad start. Like, what did you make of Duncan not finishing this game?
I think it was just a matchup against DeMar DeRozan. DeRozan would have found a way to attack him and kind of switch on him. And being as proficient as he said, I was going to call him a foul merchant, but I don't want to go that route.
You would never
he's
say
very
that.
good. No, never. He was very good at drawing fouls late in the game. Like they took a lot of free throws in the fourth quarter. They were getting not necessarily a friendly whistle, but they were aggressive and they were getting the whistle. And as a result, I think they would have found a way to attack Duncan. So I'm a little surprised too. I thought he was going to be out there, at least from a scoring perspective. I saw the rotation as they were kind of going on to the floor. I'm like, you're kind of missing a really good 3-point shooter who's been a real good spark over the last couple of games, and he wasn't on the floor. So I don't know. Spo didn't really have an answer. Again, he was trying anything to see what worked, and nothing really did tonight.
Different guys stepped up at different points, right? We got that Caleb Martin to Jimmy Butler, then Jimmy Butler to Caleb Martin, back-to-back transition buckets. Kevin Love made back-to-back threes in the third quarter. I think he made 3 total threes in the third quarter, 11 points in that period. That helped Miami cut the lead to 6 at one point. I think they got it to as little as 3 or 4 at one point in the fourth quarter even. Mm-hmm. It was just too little too late. Like when you go down that early, sometimes that's it, man. Like, and you could play well, and I thought the bench did. Again, we mentioned Jaime Jaquez earlier. It wasn't his best game. I thought the turnovers were a little tough. He had 2 of them, but 22 points on 6 of 14 shooting. He got to the line a bunch, as did Jimmy Butler, both of them getting to the line for 10 free throws each. Like the bench was good. I thought RJ Hampton was good energy out there. I thought Jamal Cain provided good energy out there. They only scored 3 points apiece, but I thought the energy really kind of sparked them overall. But they just got outplayed. They got outplayed by a Bulls team that's been playing really well. Their only losses, by the way, Chicago recently, Denver and Milwaukee. Yeah. Like those are really good teams. Those are the teams that they're losing to. Other than that, they're beating. I think they have a Spurs win in there somewhere. But like other than that, they're beating good teams, including the Heat tonight. So you don't want to take too much away from Chicago, but you also want to keep in mind it's the second night of a back-to-back. Miami's still without Bam Adebayo and Tyler Herro. We do have a Tyler Herro update that we're going to get to later on, a target date for Tyler's return, but not before we get to some blame pie. That's all coming up here on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by Dave. At one point or another, we all need a little financial help, and that's why Dave is great. Not just a great name, but also a great company. Dave can get you the cash you need when you need a hand between paychecks, and you can help build your credit by settling extra cash advances on time. Dave is a banking app that's leveling the financial playing field. When you download Dave, you could get up to $500 in 5 minutes or less. No credit check, no late fees. It's all part of Dave's extra cash account. Advance the money and you need with no interest, and then you settle up later. So download Dave today at dave.com. That's DAVE.com/LockedOnBA. That's dave.com/LockedOnBA. You get $500 in 5 minutes or less. No credit check, no late fees. Download the Dave app or go to dave.com/LockedOnBA. For terms and conditions, go to dave.com/legal. Eligibility criteria and instant transfer fees do apply, and banking services are provided by Evolve, member of FDIC.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube and your favorite podcast app. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Well, David, it's not such a great tasting segment for Locked On Heat. Now we get to hand out some blame pie. We got 10 slices of blame pie to hand out here. I think we need to start at the center position. My only question is, do you want to start with the starter, Orlando Robinson, or the one that came off the bench in Thomas Bryant?
Well, maybe I had a different perspective on Thomas Bryant because I didn't think he was all that bad. But I guess maybe defensively there were some problems there. Maybe it was just the way I was seeing it. Maybe and watching it in person, it seemed like he was bringing some good energy. He was being aggressive, setting good screens. So I guess to answer your question, let's start off with Orlando because unfortunately he did struggle defensively. Only wound up playing 14 minutes. We talked about it in yesterday's recap in the win over Charlotte. It looks like he's just going to be playing the first and third quarters. The start of the first and third quarters didn't really have anything else to contribute, and he kind of struggled. Again, he was part of the problem. It wasn't entirely his fault, but I think it's just, again, asymptomatic of the fact that Miami's point of attack defense was a struggle all night, and then he was kind of just left there, just having to mop up as Ayo Dosunmu or somebody was driving to the rim, and he just didn't have an answer for them, so he would lead to a foul or an easy bucket, and so it just, I think his minutes look sloppy, but I think it's also just a recognition that he's not a great defender. And Nikola Vucevic really attacked him in the third quarter when he had a monster performance there. Like most of, I think the bulk of Vucevic's points came in the third, and his eyes lit up when he saw Orlando on him, and he just figured it out. You know what? I'm just going to be able to attack this kid early on and just get to my spots and find him at the rim. And that's exactly what he did. And when he didn't, when with Orlando drop coverage, he was just able to flare back out to the 3-point line, knock over those easy jumpers because he's a good shooter.
You know what I thought about watching this game when Vucevic was basically just taking it to Orlando any way he wanted? Was Orlando talking with us on media day and explaining how strong Steven Adams is, and how that was sort of his welcome to the NBA moment, is when Steven Adams basically just pushed Orlando Robinson's whole body out of the way to grab a rebound with his other hand. Vucevic isn't as strong as Steven Adams, but he's stronger than Orlando Robinson. And I think if there's a weakness in Orlando Robinson's game, it's that he's just young and he's still sort of filling out. And it just felt like Vucevic bullied him, and Orlando Robinson really couldn't make a dent on the boards. He was getting out-rebounded by Vucevic, but he's also kind of getting pushed around by Patrick Williams and even Ayo Dosunmu at some points, who's a big guard, but still a guard. I don't know. I just he's young, right? And these are the things that he has to do to get better. But obviously, he's just not as strong as some of these big NBA, 30-year-old centers who have been doing this for a long time. In the case of Vucevic or a guy like Steven Adams, but it wasn't a great game for Orlando Robinson. He had one job: control the boards, rebound, and produce on the boards, and he didn't do it. And he got out-rebounded pretty badly, and it wasn't very close. And that was the tough part. So blame pie for him. Of the 10 slices,
2, 3.
Yeah, 3 seems like a lot because I don't feel like anybody played awesome.
Right. So
let's
2.
go 2. I'm gonna go 1 with Thomas Bryant, and I'm with you that there was moments where it felt like he was bringing good energy, but I do wonder if it was just relative because Orlando Robinson was so bad tonight that Thomas Bryant just looked a little bit better. But defensively, he got that 3-second call on him when the Miami Heat were in zone, but apparently didn't tell Thomas Bryant because he didn't realize that they were in zone, and he was a little confused. There's also moments that in the zone defense that he was playing way up high and was allowing backdoor cuts. So I just thought he gave up more defensively than he was able to produce offensively. He had 6 points tonight on 2 for 2 shooting. That's fine, but you need more. Yeah, you know what I mean? You need more like you had the night previous against the Hornets where you had like 11 or 12 points off the bench. So I would give 1 to him just because, again, I just think Miami centers got completely outplayed tonight.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I liked his energy overall, though. But defensively, it's still a work in progress, as it has been throughout his career. So I don't expect that to change anytime soon. You're just going to have to live with it. And I know a lot of Heat fans are frustrated again at the center rotation, but you know what? It all seems like it'll be fixed pretty soon once Bam Adebayo returns to action. So I wouldn't be too
Seems like
concerned
it's a
about
big
it.
deal. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm actually thinking about it. I might even go as high as 2 for Thomas Bryant because the defense was that bad. I mean, the bench basically got the Heat back in this game, but it wasn't because of Thomas Bryant. It was the Kevin Love minutes that were so good. He was a +5. Thomas Bryant, despite being part of that bench and avoiding the hole, the 33-8 hole, was still just a neutral. The Heat they didn't get outscored in his minutes. So I might even go as high as 2 for Thomas Bryant. But
I'm having a hard time figuring out where to dole out the rest because
I thought it
between
was a
giving
tough game for Caleb Martin, man. I really did.
was
Like
it really?
Caleb, yeah, defensively again, and I don't know what it's been this week, but it's not been a great week for Caleb Martin. If we were to really do a film dive on his defense these last few games, it wouldn't be great. The first game against Charlotte in Charlotte, I thought his point of attack defense was really bad.
Yeah.
The Heat, I think they started Kyle Lowry on Kobe White, but that didn't last very long tonight. They ended up basically using Caleb Martin for most of the game on Kobe White. And we saw what Kobe White did. He tore him up, man. Like he carved him up. Caleb tried a bunch of different things, 94 feet, going over the screens, going under the screens, like all these things, and just didn't work. He's getting caught leaning the wrong way a lot. It's just like a little too aggressive. I don't know if he's trying to jump passing lanes or hedge a little too hard or whatever it was, but not just tonight. But I noticed it in the Charlotte game too. And I just thought defensively he got torched. I didn't think it was a good game for him. Offensively,
He's
he had
fine.
those moments, 17 points, 4 assists. He did have 11 rebounds, which were important. So I don't want to like dole out too much blame to him. But defensively, he's just not the guy that I
Stressful.
think we're used to seeing on that end.
Yeah, that's fair. And maybe his game is always lead more towards being a more productive offensive player than it is defensive. But he used to at least make up for that with that elite athleticism and being able to jump those passing lanes and make up for his lack of overall strength. I mean, he was playing the 4 last year. And he was basically holding his own during those minutes. But I think he's still kind of bouncing back from injury. It's tough to say that considering how explosive he looked on some opportunities offensively, but defensively he does look a little bit out of sorts.
Yeah.
So
It's weird, but it's a good point. And I noticed to say, like, offensively, he's running the floor, transition, dunks. He does like the patented Caleb Martin start in the corner, drive, dunk at the basket thing, like all that there. But like defensively, the side to side stuff just seems a little. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe the north-south stuff is there, but the side-to-side stuff not quite yet there. I'm not sure. Obviously, he would never tell us the truth, but we'll go there. I don't know, two slices of blame pie for him.
Yeah.
I'm ready to just give the rest to Jimmy.
Wow.
Yeah, you know what? It's unfair, but when you're the star of the team and you lose like that and you get off to a bad start, I know he had 20 points on 6 of 15 shooting, 7 rebounds, 7 assists, just 1 turnover, but he's passing up threes now. I don't know. 20 points on a night where you got outscored by 3 different Chicago Bulls and your backup in Jaime. We talked about this when Bam went out and when Tyler was out. It was like, okay, who's going to step up now that Bam is out indefinitely for a little bit here? And it had to be Jimmy. And I don't recall a game that Jimmy played like a superstar. He's played fine, but fine isn't good enough. And at some point, the blame has to go to him. Like the buck stops with Jimmy. He's the leader of the team.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I know a lot of, again, Heat fans were a little frustrated, but he has to do a little bit more. And, he might have been fatigued, and we should point out there was his, first back-to-back
Good
set
point.
all season. So, there's something to be, he should get some credit for going out there and trying his best, but he wasn't also very good early on, and not until, to your point earlier, as you said, not until like the third quarter did he have his best offensive performance, and then only 3 points in the fourth quarter when it was too little too late there. Like we expect more from him, and he should have been able to produce more. So I'm totally fine giving him the rest of the blame pie.
4 heaping slices of blame pie then for Jimmy Butler. Eat up, Jimmy. All right. Tyler Herro, we got an update. When's he coming back? Sounds like it could be soon. We got the latest details coming up here on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. It is so easy. It's just you versus the projections versus you get grab 2 to 6 players and their stat projections, and you watch the winnings roll in. You don't have to go up against thousands of other people placing wages or anything like that. It's just you versus the numbers. That's what makes Prize Picks so much fun. And if you can play with the basketball season's here, you can outpick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League, a league created specifically for combo projections that includes 2 or more players from different sports or leagues. For example, LeBron James and Travis Kelce at 10.5 combo of 3-pointers made and receptions. That's a great deal right there. Again, it's so easy to use and it's so much fun. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use the code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match of up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Make sure you are subscribed on YouTube and on your favorite podcast app. If you're watching this long, make sure you hit a like. Hit that like button here on YouTube. Make sure that you are subscribed. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks to everybody who sent in questions for the postgame show on Twitter using that hashtag AskLOHeat. You can also reach us on Instagram, Locked On Heat, LockedOnHeat@gmail.com as well. Tyler Herro said before the game that he is targeting Monday against the Timberwolves or Wednesday in Orlando against the Magic to make his return. Comes at a good time, doesn't it, David?
Absolutely. I saw a lot of people saying that tonight's game was indicative of how much the Heat have needed Bam and Tyler both. I don't know about that. I don't think Miami's problems were mostly on the offensive end. So I disagree with that overall statement. But that's not to say that Miami hasn't needed that go-to bucket getter. They certainly could have used some of that in the fourth quarter and the spark he provides. Again, I think if there's been a recurring theme for all these spate of injuries that Miami has been dealing with, it's the fact that Miami's depth has been their biggest strength. They keep finding players to step up and produce and things of that sort. So once you get these guys back and healthy, you'll be able to, in Spo's words, just see what happens. Try anything and see whether or not it works. So absolutely could have used Tyler tonight. I think it comes at the right time. I can't imagine him traveling to Orlando in his first game back, though. I guess it depends on how
far away Orlando. Why not?
How often do players return to action in an away game like that? I don't know. That just seems a little untypical. No,
it would be.
It's the eye test here, right? It just never feels like that's the case.
If they were playing like in Utah, but it's Orlando. It's like basically a home game. I don't know.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
I disagree with you in like I thought if you would have had Tyler Herro in this game, maybe he cuts off the bleeding a little earlier with a much needed bucket, and it doesn't quite get 33-8. You know what I mean? Or with Bam, I mean, defensively,
no,
forget it. Vucevic doesn't do what he did tonight if Bam's in there. He might have a good game. Vucevic always has a good game against Miami, but he doesn't do that. And you're not letting Ayo Dosunmu and Kobe White get to the basket whenever they want either if Bam's back there. So the Heat win this game if Bam's playing. But yeah, you need these guys back soon. But we're talking about Tyler Herro because we still don't have a timetable on Bam, although it sounds like he's going to be back before the end of the month. So it could be one of these games or it could be a game after that. But Tyler Herro is targeting either the Monday game or the Wednesday game. They need him back. And if you think that this is the game, and I'm not talking about you, David, I'm talking about like the general you, viewers you. If you think this game is the game where it was like, oh, wow, it's apparent that they missed Tyler Herro, then I don't know what Heat games you've been watching over the last week and a half. Because it's been apparent for a minute that they missed Tyler Herro. As good as everybody has been, Duncan Robinson, Jaime Jaquez Jr., you can always use more. And the Heat could certainly use more. They can use Tyler Herro, whether or not it's coming off the bench or starting again. So I think it's great news. Interestingly enough, it's going to be his 18th or 19th game in a row that he's missed by the time he comes back, depending on which game it is. He's going to be ineligible for any season awards. No All-Star. He's ineligible. The NBA has now the 65-game minimum. He's not going to meet that. So he's ineligible for an All-Star. He's ineligible for sixth man.
No, All-NBA, not All-Star. Postseason awards only.
Oh, All-NBA, but he's also not going to make the All-Star after missing that many games.
No. That wasn't likely to happen. Anyway.
You miss almost 20 games, you're not making the. Like Jimmy Butler missed a bunch of games last year, and he played awesome when he played, and he still wasn't an all-star because he missed too many games. And the guard depth in the East is just bananas right now. So I do wonder, and we'll go to the questions now because I thought this was an interesting one. The Mickey Arison, and I don't think it's the Mickey Arison.
The owner of the team was sitting next to Udonis Haslem today. So
saw that. How cool was that?
He walked right by media roll, shook hands. Still a man of the people. Yeah, you did.
Nice. You did. The Mickey Arison on Twitter writes in, and by that point, hopefully Heat staff gets it through Tyler's head that he can't make all NBA or all-star after missing that many and takes the sixth man role back. It's an interesting concept. If all these individual goals are out the window this year, does it almost just humble Tyler Herro a little bit more to the point where, and by the way, I disagree with the notion that you can't bring Tyler Herro off the bench because he doesn't want to. All right. I don't buy that. That's not Heat culture. That's not how the Heat operate. I just don't buy it. It might not go over super well, but he'll do his job. He always has. And so if it doesn't go over super well, I don't really care. If he's a little unhappy, I don't really care. And I don't think Eric Spoelstra really cares. I think but I do wonder if just the general being like, okay, it's all just sort of like whatever now. It doesn't really matter because I can't win any of these awards anyway. Maybe I'll just do it.
Maybe I could. I don't know. I think he would say that it was never about those awards and that recognition. Anyway, it was always about team success. But it's also a driving factor at the same time. He's trying to create his legacy. He's trying to establish who he is as an all-time great. Like that's what you go into this league. That's ultimately the goal. You want to be able to carve out something very clear about who you are, your identity within the context of the NBA. And I think for him, he sees himself as a superstar. And in order to do that, you need to get those kinds of awards. You need to get that kind of recognition. And I think you also need to start. So I don't know. There was some consensus among media members earlier today that there's no chance that he would come off the bench. I kind of tend to agree with you. I think the coaching staff has to make tough decisions, and you have to be able to sell him on it. And I think he has to be able to accept that for the betterment of the team. I also think it could be somewhat problematic, but I don't, looking at tonight's game, Duncan was good offensively in his 26 minutes, limited playing time, but he was still good offensively. I don't know how you can further cut into that. And then who else's minutes get cut as a result? Do you play Jaime less? Like there are people talking about Jaime should be starting. That's not realistic either. But Caleb's minutes, maybe does he get cut as he's finding his rhythm? Does Kyle's minutes get cut? Does Kevin Love's minutes get cut? Like, not to mention even guys like on the fringes like Josh Richardson or Jamal Cain or somebody like that. Like those minutes seem like they're going to evaporate. But I mean, of the players who are in the
minutes, they'll find the minutes. I'm not that worried about it. Like you're going to cut Jimmy Butler's minutes. You don't want him playing 36 minutes a night. If you can get him back down to closer to 30, 32, there's 5 minutes. There's 5 minutes right there. So I think if you were ever going to bring Tyler off the bench, now would be the time. You can't bring him back and start him and then bring him off the bench. That's a tough look. But if you bring him back and say, hey, we really like what Duncan's giving us in that starting lineup. We don't really want to shake things up. Kyle Lowry's been playing awesome. You're not benching him right now. He's been great this year. I don't know that you could start Lowry, Tyler, and Duncan with Jimmy and Bam. Now you're a little small. You're a little too much offensive leaning. I just don't see Spo doing that. I think some teams would do that. I don't think the Heat would do that. No. And especially when Haywood Highsmith comes back. So if you were ever going to do it, now's the time to do it. And I think, and I got no reporting behind this, David, but I would guess that the coaching staff realizes that. Because you can always bring him off the bench and say, hey, we're going to ease you back in, and then start him later. But you can't really do the other version of that, right? Where you thrust him back into the starting group, bench Duncan, and then try to reverse course a month from now. That's a tougher look. So I think politically it actually makes more sense to just bring him back off the bench and say, hey, this isn't forever, but we're just going to ease you back in because we don't want to shake things up. And by the way, like Tyler wants to be a starter. Who doesn't? Like every NBA player wants to be a starter for the most part. There are some players that like coming off the bench, but for the most part, he'll still do his job. He's always done the job. When he did the job, he won 6th Man of the Year. He was the best in the league at that job. I think all of that stuff has been vastly overstated. But it is something that the Heat need to consider going forward.
No,
all right.
It's a good point. I think it does make things a lot more smoothly, because then if you bring him off the bench again and run a minutes restriction, we don't want to throw you out into the fire too quickly. And then when things When eventually you might need a change or might be looking for a spark, then you can make the switch and then say, you know what, maybe we'll bring him back into the starting lineup because he's been playing well, or maybe because Duncan struggles, or who knows, maybe another injury could take place, and then you go, you know what, we've got a great all-star level player coming off the bench. Let's bring him into the starting lineup.
We'll see what happens. It's either going to be Monday or Wednesday for Tyler Herro to make his return. The Heat play next on Saturday, a rematch against the Chicago Bulls at home at Kaseya Center. But for now, thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast app. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel.